up and posted, and we'll also send out the deck shortly after the meeting to everyone on the mailing list here. This reminder, the purpose of the committee is to advise the agency on board matters and other matters related to educator preparation programs in Texas. This meeting is going to be a little different. We've had to sort of shuffle the agenda a little bit, but our norms, please ask that you keep your microphone muted unless you're speaking, and ask that we reserve participation and camera use for our EPAC members. Non-members are certainly welcome to reach out to TEA staff directly on any questions or input, if either in the meeting or after the meeting, but ask that participation be limited to EPAC members. One heads up for moving forward on agency meetings, we're still trying to figure out the best way to deal with accessibility issues, but moving forward in the new year, I think we'll likely be on a platform other than Zoom to account for closed captioning and some of those things. Most likely it will be Teams, but we're still trying to, still learning in the virtual world we're in, but just wanted to give folks a heads up on that. If you start seeing agency meetings scheduled on another platform, that is why. Mark, on our agenda, we're gonna kind of flip the script because Jessica is at least double booked, if not triple booked this morning. And so we're gonna try to front load some of the pieces that she's presenting. And with that, I will hand it to her and get out of the way.
Thanks, Ryan. So as Ryan shared, we're flipping the script a little bit today. We're going to start the meeting by discussing EdTPA and some updates there, and then, oh, sorry, Mark, and then transition into a conversation around the thing that is top of mind for everyone, I could imagine, science teaching reading exam transition. And then we'll close out by discussing some updates related to Educator Standards Advisory Committees that we'll be discussing with the SBEC, EPAC membership, and continuing approval updates as well. So I'm going to kick us off by a discussion around EdTPA updates. I'm going to name up front, apologize up front, and ask for grace. My internet access has been spotty at best over the past day and a half. So if I freeze all of a sudden and you are staring at an awkward view of my face, apologize up front, and hopefully I will return shortly. So to start, we have 3 items at the December SBEC meeting that are focused on the EdTPA and performance-based assessment implementation. Item 6 will be asking the board to consider and take appropriate action on proposed amendments to Chapter 230, specifically 230.117. We have in item 10, a discussion that will be facilitated by the team from Sam Houston State University, providing an update on their T-test pilot study. And item 11 will be a discussion of EdTPA pilot updates. In item 6 specifically, again, as I shared, this is an item where we'll be bringing forward a proposed amendment to Chapter 230.117, which will update the definition of a pilot exam to extend the EdTPA performance assessment pilot period, which will then lead to an SBEC review of September 1, 2022 from the original date of September 1, 2021. At the October meeting, the SBEC did signal the approval of the extension of the pilot, approving TEA staff to bring forward this proposed pilot extension language, which we'll be presenting at the December meeting. And the amendment, if you are looking along in the SBEC board book, is on page 61 of that book. Mark, thank you. So with this proposed action, this would allow TEA staff to continue to gather data on Texas pilot implementation of the EdTPA, support preparation programs and candidates who are participating in the pilot, provide the SBEC, as you all can see, with continual updates at SBEC meetings, work with Sam Houston State in the implementation of their study, and then provide an update on the outcomes of the second year of the pilot in fall of 2021, and an analysis of all 3 years of the pilot in the fall of 2022, again, specifically by September 2022. I'll pause to see, were there any questions related to the item 6? Apologies, I didn't have the chat open. I will have it open now as well, in case folks want to pop any questions in the chat. Moving on to item 11. So item 11 is our discussion item on the status of the EdTPA pilot. As you all are well aware, we've had a standing item related to the EdTPA at each one of our SPEC meetings at the request of the board. And at this meeting, we will be planning to provide a summary of EdTPA Year 1 pilot data. At the October meeting, we received some really fantastic questions and feedback from the board about the EdTPA and the EdTPA processes, and are planning on presenting a proposed timeline of discussion items with the board across the next few meetings. So you can see at the meeting, at our December meeting, we will discuss the EdTPA Year 1 summary data, including the final numbers of candidates who submitted EdTPA portfolios, statewide candidate performance trends, and action steps that are already underway to support data-informed continuous improvement in the second year of the pilot. We also plan to review with the board components of the EdTPA itself and the process a candidate engages in to complete the assessment. And during item 10, Sam Houston State will provide their update on the T-test pilot study, which the board also inquired about. During the February meeting, we've tentatively planned to bring a summary of Year 1 perception data and statewide trends to the board, and an update on recruitment for a third year of the pilot, again, pending the SBEC's approval. And in April, we've tentatively planned to dive deeper into the EdTPA portfolio and provide updates regarding Year 3 implementation planning and supports, again, pending the SBEC's approval. And of course, we will be open to additional topics of discussion based upon the SBEC members' feedback. So when we chat with the board next Friday, we will begin with a discussion around providing additional context around the EdTPA tasks themselves, which we aim to then provide some additional context as we dig into the Year 1 pilot summary data. It's when we understand deeply what the tasks ask candidates to do, it really contextualizes that data and really leads to some rich conversation around opportunities for continuous improvement at the statewide level, at the program level, and at the individual candidate level. Thanks, Mark. So during the item, we plan to share with the SBEC that comprehensive data on the Year 1 pilot, again, sharing those final submission numbers, candidate demographic information, and those performance trends. And specifically in the item itself, I didn't want to read out charts to folks. That's never particularly interesting, though Mark looks like he might like to read out chart. I don't know, that smile is indicating to me, Mark, you might like to read out a chart or two. But the actual data itself is located within the items on the page numbers indicated on the screen. I've provided some high-level summary data as well. So in summary, 419 candidates from 16 educator preparation programs submitted EdTPA portfolios during the first year of the EdTPA pilot. Candidates submitted portfolios in 14 distinct subject areas. And again, we have those statewide descriptive statistics that can be found within the item. We would name that overall Texas candidates mean score, so the average of all candidate scores of scoreable portfolios for each one of those subject areas was below the national mean. But we recognize that this really aligns with trends that other states have also experienced when piloting implementation of the EdTPA. And it's really to be expected as collaboratively EPPs work with faculty, staff, candidates, and LEA partners to really engage in this beginning implementation of the EdTPA, while many other states that are represented in that national mean have been implementing the EdTPA for many years. We also want to name that it's important to note that when determining a performance threshold for teacher certification, each state establishes their own official cut score, and Texas would have the opportunity to do so as well. At the task level, we have some really rich and informative data that demonstrates that Texas candidates demonstrated relative strength in task 2, which is the facilitation of instruction itself. And that's particularly interesting because that task 2 is actually the task that includes a candidate videotaping their instructional practice. So overall, that really elevated as an area of strength across Texas candidates. And we've identified opportunities for growth across Texas candidates in terms of task 3, which is assessment. So a candidate's ability to analyze the outcomes of an assessment they delivered to students and intentionally think about designing reteach strategies that meet the needs of those candidates. So that type of rich and detailed data can really help inform continuous improvement efforts going forward. And we're looking forward to discussing them more with the SBAC. In addition, we also wanted to share that when examining the performance data trends by group, which we provided by gender and by ethnicity and race, we did want to name that it's important to note that the number of candidates by group are relatively low throughout the first year of the EdTPA pilot. And therefore, while our Texas mean performance is indicated by group, the variance is still relatively wide. And we really recognize that more data will need to be collected over time to determine the overall performance of EdTPA by Texas candidate groups. And we intend to continue to gather and monitor this data closely throughout the second year of the EdTPA pilot and the third year of the EdTPA pilot pending the SBAC's approval. I would say the good news is that the second year of the pilot is already on track to well exceed candidate submission totals for the first year of the pilot. We're excited to dig into that rich data with programs participating in the pilot shortly. Overall, as we've had conversations with many of the EPPs who are engaged in the EdTPA pilot, they've all really named that the Texas EdTPA pilot is really an opportunity to learn lessons about EdTPA implementation to support programmatic adjustment and really inform statewide continuous improvement supports. So the EdTPA pilot has also already provided candidates, programs, and the state some really rich data regarding areas of strength and opportunities for growth. And actions are already underway at the state level to support programs in EdTPA implementation based upon those data trends. So specifically, as I named, I'm looking for opportunities for continuous improvement support around implementation of task 3. We've heard from many of our programs around strengthening partnerships with LEA partners, knowing the alignment around instructional practices in our PK-12 settings and within the EdTPA implementation. And again, supporting the programs that are engaging in the EdTPA pilot in digging deeply into their own programmatic level and even candidate level performance trends to inform continuous improvement. With that, before we transition to a discussion of the STR, I'll pause to see if there's any questions related to those updates.
I had a question about recognizing how important the data for the 3-year pilot will be in the future, especially year 2. How are we factoring in the challenges that we've had with the pandemic? Because I'm sure you're seeing that there's some regions that are having some more difficulty in getting students recruited, and the video recording has been really a challenge for us, especially. So how do we know, how are we factoring that in? I didn't hear a lot of discussion about that.
No, I appreciate you raising that, Dr. Garcia. So as we've shared previously, with the onset of the pandemic, kind of in partnership with Pearson and Scale, they made some quick maneuvers to allow for candidates to complete their EdTPA portfolio in a virtual learning environment. So that included the ability to videotape virtual instruction. And we recognize that our programs have done some fantastic outreach and collaboration with LEA partners to really frame the why behind that EdTPA video collection, even in that virtual environment. And we've seen actually a fair number of candidates. I apologize for not having the exact numbers of candidates already submit portfolios in a virtual learning environment with our fall submissions. Overall, Pearson and Scale did some intensive analysis of those portfolios that were submitted during last academic year that included the virtual learning environment. and saw no differentiation in terms of candidate performance outcomes from those who facilitated instruction in an in-person setting versus those who facilitated instruction in a virtual setting. So we feel confident in the reliability of the data that we're receiving from candidates, be it their facilitation of instruction, again, in that in-person or virtual setting. We will say, though, that certainly the impacts of COVID impacted our number of candidates who were able to ultimately submit portfolios during the first year of the EdTPA pilot. We've been really encouraged by the number of portfolios that we've already seen submitted during the fall semester, but we recognize that there's still work to be done. I think the one thing I would name is that in terms of the EdTPA pilot, I think we want to make sure that we clarify is that the EdTPA as a valid and reliable assessment of candidate performance is not being piloted in our EdTPA pilot. That the assessment itself has been piloted and analyzed over the course of many years. Really, our intention with this EdTPA pilot in Texas is to really observe the impact of the EdTPA on Texas candidates and Texas students. And we recognize that data collection has been an ongoing a source of conversation, but I think that really, if the board is amenable to move towards the extension of the pilot for a third year, I think it gives us that opportunity to continue to collect that data, continue to examine it really transparently, and really come back to stakeholder groups and the aspect and talk authentically around what this data that we have given COVID times and hopefully post-COVID times means for Texas candidates. But I appreciate that question. All right, exercising my virtual wait time and making sure I'm not frozen. These are the things that are extra tricky with bad internet connection. But I'm going to now transition over to a discussion of the STR exam implementation. This item, so related to the SPEC agenda, we will discuss with the SPEC as we have across the past, I think now past 5 or 6 SPEC meetings, a specific update on the status of the STR exam transition in item 12. So as we specifically think about the STR exam transition, we are really thinking about that final push to December 31st, 2020. And we recognize that there has been intentional and significant work that all of our Texas educator preparation programs have engaged in to get the word out to candidates about this upcoming requirement. And we really just wanted to start by checking in. So in the chat, if you all wouldn't mind, just sharing, how's it going as you all are thinking towards this final push towards December 31st, 2020?
So I think we'll just take about 30 seconds. Folks can drop some stuff into the chat, and then we can maybe have a share back here virtually. But like Jessica said, knowing all the great work that you're doing, how are things going right now?
Thank you all so much for sharing. And I see some topics that are still coming in the chat. But I'm seeing some trends of folks really working on some short cycle communication out to candidates, ensuring that they're coordinating internally with registrars to get degrees posted. Looks like there's some really intentional outreach with some final candidates to get them over the hurdle. Fantastic.
I just name, I really appreciate, Dr. Brasher, I wonder, you noted the Waiver Pro communications that y'all have been doing. I wonder if you talked a little, if you could share a little bit with the group about how you've been doing that specific reach out to those Waiver Pro candidates that were certified. I wonder if you could just share a little bit more about that.
Hey, Mark, I would be happy to. We're probably very fortunate because we only have 2. So 50% have completed. But we sent them communication early on. And because we only had 2, I also communicated with the HR departments of the districts where they were placed. And so that has really encouraged them to get things done. Our one holdout, unfortunately, didn't pass. And so she's got a tight timeline for having one more opportunity, but the communication from you was also helpful. We sent that out again and it just spurs things along. I will say, so that was true with Waiver Pro, but some of our former candidates who graduated and maybe had not completed, we've had quite a few of those testing and completing too with all the communication we've been sending out. So it's been pretty effective and hopefully we don't have a lot of those coming back later on.
Nice. I think that's really great to hear, and really appreciated y'all stepping up and doing that additional communication. I think we noted somewhere that frequently there's routes of communication that we here at the agency may not have. You may have updated email addresses, updated phone numbers, and so we really appreciate getting to partner with y'all in reaching out. Dr. Warner, I wonder if you could talk, you noted the piece around working with the registrar to get degrees posted. I know that this has been something that has been on a lot of folks at IHEs. It's been on their minds, particularly as we come up against the end of the semester. I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about the work that you've been doing around those degrees.
Sure. We started early talking with our registrar's office about this. And just told them the situation. And since we have a very large undergraduate program, we have couple hundred or more potential people being eligible to be certified before December 30th. But this kind of technical piece that we needed the degree to actually post before we could click the button to certify them, to recommend the certification kind of thing. So they agreed to fast track the degree posting for the candidates, and we're still sending them kind of the final numbers of here are the people who've completed their tests and are going to be successfully completing student teaching, and we'll need that fast track degree posting, which can't really happen until grades post December 18th. So there's this like push with lots of people, and our certification officer, the dean, approved some overtime for her to work into the break certifying. So lots of moving parts to get it done for those candidates, which we think is fair to them because all of this came about while they were near the end of their programs. So we're happy to do it. And I've really been pleased with how everybody is pitching in to help out with that.
Yeah, that sounds really great. And I really appreciate you sharing and all the work that y'all are doing there. I think one of the things that we are starting to think through on our side as well, that you named a little bit, is like, can we get overtime approved? Can we get holiday work approved? Who's going to, what resources do we have to be able to handle those types of last minute questions that are happening during this holiday break? So I really appreciate you naming that. That's work that we're thinking through on our side as well.
Mark, it's Donna. May I ask a question?
Sure.
So I saw Roy had put in the chat, he's back here in my West Texas area, for students having to drive so far to take the exam. Has Pearson cut back on the number of tests? Because it seems like recently there's a bigger struggle for our students to find a testing location. And of course, we have areas around here where they can drive, but they're having to drive 3 to 6 hours to find a test within the timeline. So I just wondered if something was going on.
Dr. Brasher, thank you for that question. So no, Pearson has not cut back on their testing availability. I would say there's a few factors that are leading to limited capacity in some parts of the state. I would say that increased demand as we move towards the end of the calendar year, recognizing that we have traditional volume of candidates that are pursuing certification exams during this window, as well as candidates who due to the closure of testing centers in the spring, who are now pursuing those certification exams, are also in that same pool of candidates, looking for available testing slots. We'll say, though, that in addition, with increased cases of COVID across the state and across the country, there have been periodic test center closures, as a few of our partner centers, specifically some of the centers that partner with Pearson, that maybe some of those smaller centers have to close due to COVID infection or lack of staffing due to COVID. We'll name that this has been the absolute highest priority for us. We are touching base with Pearson, getting updates on the testing center capacity across the state daily. We are getting explicit information around any candidate who I was struggling to find a testing center, or may, due to a COVID outbreak in a given testing center, needed to reschedule their appointment. So we're watching this really closely. But we do appreciate candidates being flexible, using that seat availability tool to really widen their search to identify potential testing center locations. But do recognize that this is our absolute top priority and something that we're keeping a very close pulse check on.
Jessica or Mark, can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
One of the things I keep hearing, I have a couple of faculty that are working on the letters training. And they started, I guess that was back this summer when all that began. And they said that the rollout of the information that is coming from there is coming very slowly. And that they won't, and I'm getting this secondhand, so you can correct me if I'm wrong, but they're saying that won't be fully developed, that online training, until like October. And that training is aligned with the STR for those, obviously for the students that are in the pipeline, but there's some that are right at the end of this cycle that we really need that information to be able to get them ready, because they've already completed so much coursework. Can you speak about that?
I can. I appreciate that question, Dr. Capps. So in terms of letters training, our the coordination that we facilitated to connect educator preparation programs with letters training ended earlier this calendar year. So we sort of finished up those final rounds of letters training. We have opened up, though, a cohort for educator preparation program faculty and staff to participate in the Reading Academies training. And that cohort opened up in October of this year. I think we were engaging in enrollment, and the course officially started as of November. And
right. I said the wrong word. I meant Reading Academy. Yeah, but go ahead.
No. So that training has opened up as of October this year, and folks have up until April of 2021 to complete the courses, but it's self-paced. So candidates can, faculty can work their way through modules at a pace that works for them. And really the intention of the Reading Academies training access is really just to continue to support programs who are thinking about alignment between that in-service training and support of teachers around the science of teaching reading and pre-service preparation. So folks should now have access to that training and can engage in it at their own pace. And then in addition, our team here at the TEA has been facilitating a number of webinars to look more deeply at STR content. But knowing that the intention was to kind of pace that content over time, beginning all the way last summer with the initial rounds of training for letters.
Okay, so as far as you know, that Reading Academy training, that is completely open. All the modules are completely open.
My understanding is that folks work through them in a paced way, so they wouldn't be able to jump to a separate module until they've worked through the previous. But if you would not mind, Dr. Capps, what I will do is I'll go back and speak with my team as well as our internal Reading Academies team to make sure that I'm providing you the most accurate information here.
Okay.
And circle back up and share that with the group.
And I'm going to double check with them because maybe they're getting this information wrong. So I want to make sure that I understand as well. So I'll just communicate with you individually.
No, I appreciate that. And I appreciate that push. We want to make sure that everyone's got a really clear line of sight on that access to that training for those who had an opportunity to register.
Okay, thank you.
I did want to acknowledge, so mentioning the Reading Academies, I did see a trend in the chat around potential lack of clarity around expectations for the STR exam versus Reading Academy completion, or candidates who are completing both of those requirements at the same time. I wondered if there was anyone who wanted to jump off of mute to share additional context related to some of the challenges that folks are encountering. I see Dr. Queen, I know you had noted that there was some confusion there. And I know I saw Dr. Galan had mentioned as well.
Good morning, this is Ray Queen. We have some of our candidates that are working in the districts right now, and the district is having them do the Reading Academies. So our candidates are saying, well, why do we have to do the STR module for your program when I'm already having to do the Reading Academy for my district? And they're having to do both. And our reply is it's going to, doubly prepare you to take your Science of Teaching Reading exam. But that's, we have several that are in that situation, and they're juggling a lot, and the requirement for them to complete both the Reading Academy in the district and, a program's Science of Teaching Reading model has been a lot on top of what they're already juggling.
Thank you, Dr.
Good morning. This is Veronica. I agree, Ray. It's probably, and for everybody, this pandemic has created its own stress level, and we've lost our sense of safety and welfare. But the Reading Academy, because it's self-paced and I've been able to go at my own pace, is very helpful for STR. But I can understand that if you're a new teacher, you're going to feel frustrated, and it's how can we get them to understand. The Reading Academy is a criteria set forth by your district. STR is criteria where we are accountable, and the accountability is for the program and to distinguish one from the other, because it's a blessing that if our candidates, some of our interns are doing both STR and with our program and Reading Academies, we're blessed because we're not paying for that. The district is, and it's such a good tool to get them prepared. So I agree with you, Ray, they're getting doubly prepared, but it can be frustrating, and just how can we communicate that the district requires a Reading Academy. We don't as a program, and that, however, we are bound by code to provide STR training.
Thank you, Dr. Gavan, for that reflection. Absolutely. So I would name I know that I've shared this in a number of settings, but that I recognize that there's still some confusion in the field, particularly we've heard questions from some candidates and some LEA partners as well, that there's still some confusion related to the STR exam requirement that came out of House Bill 3 and the Reading Academies requirement that came out of House Bill 3. And my clarification would be that the Reading Academies requirement for House Bill 3 is a separate requirement from that STR exam requirement. So if a candidate takes and passes the STR exam, receives that certification that says, for example, core subjects with the Science of Teaching Reading, EC6, those candidates will still be required to take the Reading Academies, specifically due to that statutory requirement. Do recognize, though, that what that means for many of our candidates is they're engaged deeply in the fantastic and scaffolded and intentional training that you all are providing related to the Science of Teaching Reading, at the same time that they may be engaging in that training with their LEA. And we certainly recognize that the more STR training and support, the better. I think we've all recognized that there is a lot of content in our STR exam. And so the more that folks have opportunities to practice, the better. But we also do 100% recognize that is putting a lot on candidates' plates. In all honesty, if you hear a consistent pinging in the background of my screen, it's because there's also a meeting happening right at this moment with our internal teams to discuss the Reading Academies that I have been put on the invite list for, and the chat keeps flowing with discussion there. So I will actually be transitioning over to that meeting in just a moment to talk about some of these challenges that we've been hearing from the field, and really think strategically with our team in partnership with our TEA Reading Academies team to think about, are there ways in which we can streamline some of these requirements or work really gather feedback from the field to think about what the future of some of this could look and sound like. But really appreciate all of these questions that have surfaced. One thing
to add something. I'm sorry. I would like to add something. Here's the good news for our interns that are going through both. One, they're preparing. Two, we're not paying for the Reading Academy. And two is they'll only have to do it once. So they can check that off their list, and next year they're not going to have to do it. Because my understanding is they'll only have to do the Reading Academy once because they get certificates and they've completed that requirement for their school district. I don't know if it's in code. Can they take that certificate in case they transfer to another district? That I don't have the answer for, but I would imagine it is their certificate, so they'll be able to move it.
Absolutely. So the completion of the Reading Academies travels with a teacher from the district that they were trained in to any other district that they may serve in subsequently. One plug I would like to make as well is, and it'll be released in our newsletter on Tuesday, we plan on posting an FAQ document that's specifically focused on questions that we've been receiving from LEAs, many of which are related to the difference between the STR exam and the Reading Academy's requirement. So we're hoping that that's a useful tool to share with you all, as well as you are engaged in the ongoing conversations that we know you all are with LEA partners as well regarding these requirements.
I'd actually pick up the thread of communications with LEAs just really quickly before we move on to the next piece. And I see in the chat there was a piece from Leslie Cooper about explicitly communicating reminders to LEAs. And I wondered if you could chime in a little bit about the timeline communications you're having with LEAs. Just what we're reflecting on is that, we know that ed prep programs have really strong partnerships with the LEAs where you have, candidates placed. And so I wondered if folks could chime in a little bit about approaches towards discussions with LEAs around these timelines and the certification requirements.
So I would just jump in and say that what we're finding is, while our HR directors have been well informed over time, we're finding that and superintendents, that the communication down to the principal level is a little inconsistent. So it's really important to us as we're receiving communications from principals reaching out looking for available candidates for those mid-year hires, that we're explicitly communicating this requirement and this timeline to them as well.
That's great. Thank you for that. I think that helps also us as we're trying to think about, where can we provide additional tools and additional communication. I'm very transparently super encouraged to hear that superintendents and HR felt like they understood what was going on. That's really high leverage and key. So really good to know. And I think that Ryan Franklin just posted in the chat, the agency did post to the administrator addressed letter yesterday that specifically dives into some LEA questions around this transition and certification. So that may be an additional tool for y'all in your toolbox as you may be having these conversations. Is that sort of a clarifying document coming from the agency? I think with that, we're going to go ahead and go to the next slide.
Thanks, Mark. And this really picks up on our theme about communication. So we recognize that we have all been engaged in pretty detailed and specific communication relating to the STR exam transition for quite some time now. But in recognition of this final push to December 31st, we have facilitated direct email contact to all teachers that were impacted by the HB3 requirement who were waiver probationary candidates. We've also shared direct emails to previous finishers in an impacted certificate field who finished on or after 2015. And the emails that we've distributed directly align with those one-pagers that are posted to the STR webpage. So the content is aligned and consistent there. In addition, we've shared a number of pieces of communication with educator preparation programs, specifically via the newsletter. We've included our STR task of the week. So sort of those bite-sized next steps, or in some cases not so bite-sized next steps for programs to take in support of candidates. Mark and his team have shared Waiver Pro and WINT data sets to help facilitate connections directly with candidates. We've shared a number of communication resources, again, including those resources that are included on the STR webpage. And then Mark's team will be facilitating a webinar with updates and final reminders related to that STR exam transition on December 9th.
Jessica,
Mark, anything else you wanted to add there?
I was just going to chime in. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
So I really appreciate, being able to work with y'all to get these data out. I know Dr. Jones is on the line. Tim, would you like to speak a little bit, just briefly, about what we're thinking about in that upcoming webinar on 12/9 and who might be the right audience for that webinar?
For sure. Thanks, Mark. Jessica, great job so far. Hi, and good morning, everyone. Don't miss an opportunity Wednesday of next week. This is the preparation team has put together kind of a laundry list of things to consider. But the best people to have in front of this are the CERT officers for sure. We know the larger programs have got other EPP staff that help. Really, anyone that has to do with recommending candidates for certification, a lot of it, as you might expect, we're all trying in the rush to the finish line. That would be the best intended audience. Everyone could benefit from this. We've got a number of concrete suggestions, things that programs can be doing right now, leading up until that final deadline on the 31st. And some of you will have seen in newsletters, others may be new. Again, this is just one more iteration of trying to just say, hey, we know we're in this together. We've just got it. We've really set this up. Emily Newton is going to be facilitating this, one of our program specialists. And we're really excited. So please, the registration, it was on last week's newsletter. It'll be on the newsletter that'll come out on Tuesday, the day before the webinar itself. So come and join us, because we really got just literally a laundry list of great things to be thinking about. Some you can check off, some you may go, hadn't thought about that. So join us if you would. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks so much, Tim.
Thanks, Mark. And we did receive a few questions related to the STR exam that we wanted to make sure that we provided responses to. Zach Roselle had shared with us a question related to the last day that a candidate can be recommended for their standard cert using 291. And so the good news is that has been codified in TAC. It's in 233.2D. Candidates can use a passing score on the 291 for issuance of the core subjects with the Science of Teaching Reading EC6 up to but no later than December 30th, 2022. So the 291 will be available for candidates to take throughout the entire 2021 calendar year. So up until December 31st, 2021. Candidates then have a full additional year to use a passing score on the 291 for issuance of that core subjects with STR certification. Dr. Roselle, does that answer your question?
Yes, ma'am, it did. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. We also received some questions from Zach Roselle and Dr. Queen regarding if the STR will be available via cert by exam, a testing option. So to clarify there, beginning 1/1/2021, teachers who hold a standard teaching certificate who are looking to add one of these certificate fields that were impacted by the House Bill 3 requirement will be required to take the content pedagogy exam and the STR exam to add that certification field via cert by exam. So for example, if I am certified in ELAR 712 and I am called now to teach elementary students and I want to seek cert by exam in core subjects with STR EC6, I would then need to go back, take 391 and 293 in order to be able to add that core subjects with STR to my certificate via the certification by exam route. One note here, and I'd love to hear from folks to see if I've addressed the question that you've asked explicitly. Another thing I wanted to note, we've heard from a few folks who have inquired about, can a standard certified teacher, let's say I have my certificate in core subjects EC6, I've been a standard certified for some time, and my school district is now making me take, they're giving me the honor of taking the Reading Academies training. Instead of taking that training, can I cert by exam and take the STR exam and then get out of that training? The answer to that is no. So there is not a pathway in which a candidate can take the STR exam and therefore, quote unquote, not take Reading Academies training. Those are separate requirements. And even if a candidate has taken that STR exam for issuance of their certificate, they would still be required to take the Reading Academies once hired by a Texas LEA. I'll pause and see, did I answer questions related to that certification by exam path, or if there's any other questions or thought that this brings up?
No, Jessica, that was great. Thank you.
Perfect. And then I appreciate Dr. Queen for surfacing. She made a note that in the score report that candidates are receiving for 291, as we all know that 291 is comprised of a number of subtests, and the 801 subtest, the title of that subtest is ELAR and STR. It has always been ELAR and STR, but as the letters STR have taken on new meaning for candidates across the state, Dr. Queen had shared that some of candidates are looking at that STR and thinking, oh, have I already checked off this requirement? So that was a really good flag for us to just share out with others to make that note that if candidates do have questions around my 291 score report is saying STR on it, it has always traditionally said that the intention of the new 391 and the separate standalone STR exam was to take that STR content off of the 291 and now place it on that separate standalone assessment. Pause to see if that brings up any other questions or if I need to provide any additional clarification.
Jessica.
Yeah.
My understanding is that In the 801 where it's got ELAR and STR, STR is only partial. And because of our reading scores and the reports of how our reading scores have not been doing well, as a state, we've only partially addressed that. And the STR allows us to fully address our concerns for preparation and with reading academies for professional development. And that, that the STR questions effective January are removed, and they're removed from the 391. But I can see if they see ELAR and STR and they're trying to get by not wanting to take STR, that they'll say, look, but it says STR, but that's only it's got an and, so it's a partial.
You are 100% correct, Dr. Galvan. And that was really the insight of the legislature to say, our current assessment of a candidate science teaching, reading, knowledge, and skills is not sufficient for what's required of teachers on the job. And so really that's where we've pulled out the STR content that was on 801, but also extended the expectation regarding a candidate's knowledge and skills assessed now on that standalone assessment. Appreciate that clarification. Fantastic. I think we've already began conversation here, but we are looking forward to continuing to provide opportunities for additional context building, capacity building related to the content that's on the science teaching reading exam. As we've shared, the STR preparation manual is out and available via the Texas Educator Certification Program site. EPP faculty are now currently registered for and participating in the Reading Academy's blended model training. And then we've continued to facilitate webinars in our STR deep dive training series. We, at the beginning of November, had an opportunity to collaborate with some of our colleagues in the Reading Academy's team to provide additional context around that training and some of the thought process and consideration in its design. And then my team had the opportunity to facilitate and lead a training where we had an opportunity to unpack the constructed response questions within the STR exam and talk about some instructional best practice. And then we are currently in the process of planning an oral and written communication deep dive and a text comprehension and analysis deep dive. And those will, as the constructed response deep dive look like, those will look and sound more like trainings where we'll have opportunity for folks to dig into some materials, engage in some group discussion, and hopefully come out with some concrete next steps. Wanted to pause if there's what additional resources or supports would be helpful related to STR exam content that we could prioritize sharing out with the field. And I'll leave that as a thinking question. I will just name that if there's anything that comes to mind, please feel free to reach out to me. We are really committed to providing ongoing support related to the STR exam content. So if anything comes to mind, please feel free. Dr. Queen, I did see your question in the chat. Just want to make sure I had a chance to address that as well. So you've shared that if a candidate takes 291 and passes all parts except math and science, can they switch to 391? The answer in terms of the testing logistics is they could switch to 391, but the expectation is that they would need to take and pass all of the 391 subtests. So 291 and 391 are separate exams. We cannot mix and match between the subtests. So if the candidate has taken 291, passed everything except math and science, our guidance would probably be for that candidate to continue down the pathway of pursuing a successful completion of that math and science subtest, so they could have a composite passing score on the 291, which would then lead to their standard certification. A candidate, if they were so inclined to switch to 391, again, they can't take those passing scores that they had from those other fields. They would need to take the whole suite of subtests again.
And thank you, Jessica, for that. And yeah, so we can't mix and match on the tests. I think that's part of the reason why we've got that whole full calendar year of 2021 for folks to finish out if they do have any remaining subtests where they, if they haven't begun 291, I think our recommendation is to start with 391. But if they have begun 291 and they're trying to tick off the rest of the pieces, to go ahead and finish it out over the course of that year. I see also you raised the question around accountability. So the test counts separately. So if a person went in and did, so there it's going to help if they're already down the road on 291 to go ahead and finish out on 291. If somebody failed 291 twice, that would count as a second attempt fail. If they then switched to 391 and failed 391 twice, that'd count as a fail on 391 since they are separate tests. So our recommendation there would be if they're starting down the road with one test, that if they can, Jess, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think our intention and part of that having that full year of overlap and then even an additional year where they can get certified based on that is for folks to be able to finish out with the test that they're in.
You've got it, Mark. So with that, knowing that we are now in our final push to December 31st, 2020, we wanted to check to see what are any other points related to the STR transition that we should be clarifying for the field. I appreciate the questions that you all have already raised. Are there others that it would be helpful for us to clarify? The same sentiment continues. If there's anything else that comes up, please feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to put together additional FAQ documents, one-pagers, direct email. We're here to support.
I mean, I would, thank everybody. I'm sure that we'll have additional questions. We do encourage to, the newsletters that are forthcoming, the upcoming webinar that'll be a kind of a reminder laundry list on a bunch of things, the STR website, all of those things that are coming out. We do encourage you to, utilize those as you're communicating with candidates, with LEAs, with each other. And I just, I think that we do try to plug in this space. We really encourage y'all to talk with folks outside your ed prep program. If you've got others in your network, if you're part of a system or a collaborative of educator preparation programs, to share information, be that conversation starter, and let us know if there's anything else that we can provide as we head towards this deadline. Oh, one more that I almost forgot. An administrative task that we really appreciate y'all really leaning in and making sure that got completed was submitting that STR letter of attestation. We did get all of those letters in from programs. Big shout out from programs by that deadline that was in rule at December 1st. And everybody who got those submitted in should have those new with STR certificates added to their certification libraries. So that once candidates are eligible for them, you can go ahead and recommend them. You can admit people under them. If there's anything, if you submit your letter and you're not seeing those certs show up in your certificate library, please do reach out to your program specialist. And just a heads up, the old since you won't be able to recommend the old certificates, the certificates that are being replaced. Those will leave your certificate library as of midnight on 12/31. So making sure you're getting your recommendations done, because you won't be able to recommend those past the point that they aren't able to issue. And the new cert should now be in their place in your library.
Thank you all. I am going to be popping out of this meeting and going to discuss Reading Academy. So hopefully we'll have some exciting updates to share soon. But appreciate the questions and look forward to touching base soon.
Thanks, Jessica. So the next item on our agenda is related to the Educator Standards Advisory Committee update. I believe do we have Marilyn Cook joining us for this one?
You do. I've come out of Technology Witness Protection Program to talk about this one. It's great to see everyone. Thanks so much, Mark, for the intro. Jessica and I will be tag teaming on item 13 next week to the board. Many of you may remember, Mark, I think there's a one-page slide on this to kind of give some sort of overview. The board was very supportive in adopting the 4-year rule review for Chapter 239 earlier this year in February. During that time when I presented that item, we had received some direct comments from the school librarians and reading specialists about the standards and perhaps consideration for future opportunity to put some of those standards and look at them and update them as needed and bring that forward to the board. So Jessica and I are delighted to have an opportunity to do that next week. Item 13 will contain also a letter that we got from our colleagues at the Texas Librarian Association with some really great feedback on ways to improve those standards. We will be talking to the board about there's an attachment for a nomination form for the 2 separate committees. So we will be seeking nominations. The timeline for nominations is here on the slide. We'll have a chance to gather some great participants for consideration and presentation to the board for some really robust conversations, and we look forward to the opportunity. You'll see also that the forums, we're going to loop you all into this conversation and opportunity as well by including that in the EPP newsletter. And that's really sort of the gist of that item, but I'd be happy to answer any questions if anyone has anything about that, but we're really excited about this opportunity. And I'm doing like Jessica and the Academy Awards, also the dramatic virtual pause. So I'll just say, I think that one was a short and sweet item. Always wonderful to get a chance to see you all and come out of witness protection on the big screen. And I'll be listening in, and you all take care. Thanks so much, Mark.
Thanks so much, Marilyn.
Just to clarify, it's February 2021, right?
Yes.
The nomination period?
Thank you. We will, you know, I'm trying to do the matrix. We will get the right year on there. Thank you so much, Dr. Garcia. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I know that I go through these things and I'm always, I feel like there's a date or a year or something always, but that's a good call out. We will, we'll get that cleaned up. Thank you. The next piece that we wanted to share with this group was related to the EPAC membership update. So if you recall, the last time we met, and then when we met with the board, we talked about giving the board an opportunity to weigh in on an update of the construction of the EPAC. Currently, as you know, the EPAC is all ed prep programs, and we were talking with the board, and the board endorsed, you know, kind of an approach where we were able to utilize working with professional organizations and bring in a wider group of perspectives into this advisory committee. So we talked with the board about this last time, that we've got a list of 21 organizations that function in the larger educator and educator preparation space here in the state of Texas. And then we'd also have, so they'll have sort of a nomination coming from each one of those orgs. And then also we'll have 10 seats that are open nominations. So knowing that folks from educator preparation programs will have that route through both the organizations that they may be members of, and knowing that they'll be represented in those spaces, and then also with these open seats. I did want to note that members by individuals are nominated and approved by the SBEC. And so where we're at in this process is we had held an informational meeting for those organizations, kind of let them know what was going on. And we've updated and distributed the nomination form, let them know that that's there. And we've also posted that on our website, where the EPAC meetings are posted underneath the SBEC webpage. There's a page specifically dedicated to this EPAC. So we have now posted the new nomination form, and we'll be announcing that in the next newsletter that's going out, since we were able to post it, which is December 8th. Of course, I encourage everybody in this group to go check out that nomination form and consider how that fits in with your thinking and nomination here. Those forms are due back to TEA January 8th, and then that'll give us time to be able to present EPAC membership to the SBAC at the February meeting, February 12th, 2021 meeting for their approval. We did have some questions regarding sort of like thinking about like terms of this stuff. I think what we're looking at is we're planning on members serving up to a 3-year term with this kind of new crop of members, half and half serving 2 years versus 3 years. So that allows us to not have to rotate the entire board at once. We did get clarification from our friends in our administrative rule specialists that let us know that substitutions aren't actually allowed, and that any replacements of personnel do need to be approved by the SBAC. And so just as you're thinking about your participation, or if you've got membership in these groups, trying to think about like what might be the best route forward in selecting somebody to go and sit on this updated advisory committee, it is tied to the person rather than to a specific, as designated by Texas Tech University, that sort of thing, is not, it doesn't quite work that way. So that is one thing that surfaced. But encourage you, again, action item on this, encourage you to check out the nomination form, encourage you to stay tuned to the newsletter on this, encourage you to talk with your professional organizations of which you may be members to discuss how the approach may be happening within that space again. And again, we're really excited to have this update, and we'll call out, thank you, Katie, for dropping the EPAC webpage link in the chat for y'all to go and check that out. That's our update related to the EPAC. The next piece we'd like to provide an update to is related to the continuing approval process. And for that, I will turn it over to Dr. Jones.
Well, good morning again, everyone. Thanks, Mark. Just to kind of give you a heads up about what's coming up now, a week from today on December 11th, there will be item 7 on the agenda. This item will bring the 8 programs for continuing approval who were delayed due to COVID to the board. Their review itself was delayed in starting, which delayed their next steps due date. And because of that, they are being brought in the December. We had the bigger group that was brought back in October, and this will round out the 2019-2020. You can see from this visual, we had 25 to start with that were on the review cycle. 16 in a big batch were brought for continuing approval at October. We have 8 that will be coming up. In a later board item, there's a board order for one remaining program that will total 25. Is there any questions particular to that? Because we thought in planning for today that it might be good to kind of let you know we've done 2 virtual on-site reviews, and we wanted to be able to kind of give you a status and hey, how's it going? So with that, let me ask any questions on that, on item 7 coming up next week. All right, very good. Well, let me talk about, you have seen this slide once before. And we just kind of wanted to let you know how the virtual on-site reviews have gone so far in this 2021 review cycle. When you saw this at an earlier meeting, we said there'll be 3 formats used for the program reviews this year, including the traditional desk review, an on-site review, and a new virtual on-site review. The virtual on-site review was surfaced as a viable way for us to follow what TAC requires for program evaluation reviews, but to also follow the precautions necessary for both the EPP staff and TEA staff to stay safe during COVID times and when staff are unable to travel. During that virtual on-site review, EPPs can expect a detailed audit evaluating the 9 components of the continuing approval review, as you might expect, with thorough communication from our team, utilizing what we're doing today with a synchronous digital platform such as Zoom, as well as Microsoft Teams. We're finding more and more programs like the security of going through a Teams visit. The EPP can expect the lead reviewer for the team to be readily available, to communicate frequently, and to meet with a variety of EPP staff as they would in a physical on-site during the review process. As I said a minute ago, we have done 2 virtual on-site program reviews this fall, and and a third is confirmed going into early January when we come back after the December holiday break. We will have 6 more either virtual or on-site reviews when we come back after the holiday break through May. The 2 virtual on-site reviews you might be interested that were conducted this fall, they ended up being very successful, and we got a lot of favorable feedback on them. Probably because the review team itself blocks off 4 days, just like they do for an on-site review, and they focus just on that EPP review during the 4 days. They treat it just as if they were out of town at your place, even though they are at home operating remotely. The review team, we have found the review team has to be very intentional about how they plan and letting the EPP know who they would like to visit from the EPP itself. For example, the lead reviewer will provide an agenda ahead of time for the review so that the EPP staff can kind of figure out how we want to participate, how we're going to set up interviews, basically remotely with staff members. The virtual on-site review, it follows the same format, and the expectations are the same as a physical on-site review. And along with submitting the status report 2 weeks prior to the review date, a virtual on-site review will review the EPP and submit the appropriate candidate records and documents on or by the day of review, similar to that of a desk review. We really hope that we're able to come physically to the sites coming up, because there's nothing like coming to your place and meeting with your EPP family in person. But the virtual on-site has proven to be a really good option. And regardless of whichever type you get, all the EPPs are held to the same high standards of quality and accountability this year, with an eye on quality and continuous improvement. So we had a good time at the 2 that have been done. We've got 6 more coming up. One of those we know is going to be done in early January virtually, and we'll see about the others. It'll be a call that we make kind of 1 month in advance or something. Does anyone have any questions? We just kind of wanted to bring you a real quick update, how it's been, what the feedback was, and how the mechanics kind of work out. Well, with that, we certainly look forward to you kind of streaming in and listening to what's going on a week from now. We're excited about finishing out the 2019-20 review cycle, and we are knee-deep into the 2021 review cycle, and appreciate each of you. Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Tam. Just here wanted to cover just a couple of other topics. We had the question about, I think, just raising the point, and again, we do appreciate y'all providing us the insight as far as what's going on out in the field. So supervisors, may have COVID. Districts continue to function maybe virtually, maybe in person, and continue to hold some, the issues around observations and internships and clinical teachings and durations. I think it's fair enough to say that these are issues that remain complicated and complex and kind of changing day to day, week to week, and the rest. And so I think that, so Zach had raised for us in an email, just again, thinking about flexibility on ASAP accountability. And, I really appreciate y'all naming this. And I think that we're aligned with the board on this, where we are planning on towards the end of the academic year coming back to the board with sort of like a state of what's happened. And so I think that right now, as y'all are going seeing what's happening and being able to keep track of where you're able to utilize the flexibility that's already built into rule that the SBEC has already been able to provide, and where might there still, be considerations for the board. So we do look forward to bringing this back to the board, and I think we'll be we look to be informed, by ed prep programs as we're providing information to the board when we bring it back to them in the spring and summer. so that we can make sure that we've got good clarity for them as far as what's been going on. So that's kind of where we're at with that and what we've previously discussed with the board. Zach, is that respond to that concern? Anything else you'd like to share around that?
No, sir. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate that.
For sure. And like I said, I appreciate y'all keeping an eye on it and just, kind of keeping it in the mix. One more thing that I don't think we did have a slide for, but I wanted to name for folks, if you are a big fan of SBEC agendas and SBEC subcommittee meetings, you may have noticed, and I'm sure that you've already marked your calendar, that there is indeed a subcommittee meeting that is scheduled to immediately follow the SBEC meeting next week. This is for the subcommittee of the board that is evaluating for the high performing educator preparation program, the category 4 around innovative EPPs. So we got some great, the SBEC had designated an area, we posted a call, we had a number of applications come in from prep programs that put all those materials together. We went through that process, really exciting. We thank everybody, including some of the folks on the call today, who did submit an application. I just wanted to clarify, and we're going to send out an email to this effect as well. The subcommittee meeting that's happening next week is really for us to remind those subcommittee members about what this call is, what the expectations are, and then working with the subcommittee for them to start to figure out how they might want to divide up the work and reach conclusions. So there's not action to be taken by the subcommittee at that meeting. They won't be actively evaluating the applications at that subcommittee meeting. It's really a, hey, so here's the call, reminding y'all of that. Here's the relevant rules, reminding y'all of that. How would y'all like to break up or do these evaluations, and then essentially send everybody on their way. I know that Mr. Rodriguez is the chair of this subcommittee. I know that he's excited to share some of his thinking and approaches to this stuff. But I had gotten just, an inquiry from one of the programs who submitted an application, basically asking, like, do we need to come and further explain our application? I just wanted to clarify that that's really not what is going to be happening at this subcommittee meeting. It's really going to be kind of a determination of the process for the subcommittee to engage with. So although I'm sure it'll be a fascinating watch on the live stream, just wanted to let you know if you were interested in that, what the content of that will likely be. Yeah, and thank you. So Katie has posted the agenda. It's mighty short into the chat on that. And like I said, I'll follow up with an email to the programs who did submit an application, also providing that clarification. Last piece, and I know that we've got a summary of upcoming SBEC rulemaking, and wanted to know, is Chris Bogue on the call? I don't have my whole thing stretched out here to speak to this. Yes, it looks like. So I wonder, Christy, would you like to speak to the upcoming SBEC rulemaking?
Sure. So, thank you all for always asking for this. It really does help remind us that it's very important for you all to know what is coming down the pipe in regards to rulemaking. What we've got before you now is the December, which is next week, which we've got the 230A, which is the pilot extension that Jessica talked about earlier, then also the Chapter 239 Standards Advisory Committees that Marilyn had touched on. So for February right now, and this is subject to change, and it would be a great February if this takes place, but we all know with reality, there's probably going to be some more rulemaking that might come upon us. We've got that TPA pilot extension will be up for adoption, and then the Chapter 231, which is the personnel assignments, and Chapter 245, which are out of country, Maryland will be providing and opening those rule reviews so we can, open those chapters and receive any public comment on anything that may need to be changed on those or recommended changes, and then just really ensuring that the reason that these chapters were adopted initially still exist. We think that it's important to have assignments and out of country, rules, but we're just gonna stay open to that. So does anyone have any questions on anything in particular with this rulemaking timeline right now? All right, I hand it back to you, Mark.
Thanks so much, Christy. Wanted to let everybody know, I believe this was at the last meeting of the SBEC, they did approve the 2021 meeting dates. And so it gives everybody an opportunity to mark their calendars. And I think these will be, posted online and such, but with pretty much what we're used to seeing. And I think that these are also governed somewhat by the SBOE meeting dates to make sure that our cadences work out with theirs as well. But that means that our first meeting of 2021 will be February 12th. And we'll be looking forward to that. And with that, that is all of the content that we had planned for y'all today. As I believe Ryan noted at the beginning of the meeting, it is the SBEC meeting itself is relatively short agenda-wise. And so we're looking forward to working with the board through all of that. And again, I just wanted to say again, I will greatly so much appreciate the work that y'all are doing related to this forthcoming STR transition and certificate deadline and all the rest. We know that that has been a lot of work. It would have been a lot of work in normal times, and then, of course, happening within a context of the ongoing pandemic, where we've got folks working from home, folks with maybe not immediate access, folks just with a lot on their plate. And so, really appreciate all the work that y'all have been doing around that issue in particular. And I would hand it to Ryan in case he's got any last things that he'd like to share.
I just want to echo our appreciation for your ongoing work in the midst of everything that's going on to juggle it all and keep your candidates and their future students in mind as you go about your work. So we really appreciate y'all joining us. And I would just, as things run up, or if we have snags between now and first of the year and beyond, please keep in contact with your program specialist, with us if you need to, whatever we can do to be helpful during this time of transition. And wish you all a very safe and happy and healthy holiday season.